Now, how did you know at all how they were piloting it? Because they were doing some tests where they were having these things fly around in the sky, and this is what gets us deeper into your story.
Right. I was out there for one test. Right. In fact, I was with Barry in the lab, and Dennis came in and said, "We're about to run a test. Why don't you guys come out?" Or I think he said, "Barry, why don't you come out here and bring Bob with you?" We went out there, and the craft was already outside the hangar and was just preparing to lift off. Now, they were in communication with somebody in the craft.
So there was a person in the craft?
Yeah, there was certainly a person in there. Now, it's not a comfortable place to be in because it's small, so the guy has to be sitting on the floor in the middle, my best guess.
And this is the same specific craft that you worked on? Because that was the only craft that you were in.
The only one that I touched and worked on. And it quietly lifted off the ground, which was incredibly impressive to see.
Quietly or silently?
Well, quietly, because
Did it make some sort of a noise?
It produced a little corona discharge from the bottom. A corona discharge is kind of a high voltage brush, little bluish glow discharge. As it was lifting off the ground, you can hear a slight hiss sound. Now, as soon as it cleared the ground by about 5 or 10 feet, maybe even less than that, the hissing stopped and the blue glow disappeared. So it lifted off quietly, and then it hovered silently, if you want to be specific.
Wow. So then what kind of maneuvers was it doing?
It took off, for that particular time, it took off, moved a little around to the left and right, and then sat back down. The craft itself, they communicated with it with because I saw the guy talking in a regular VHF radio to the person in the craft. And I even saw the frequency that was on the frequency counter of the communication, the transceiver there. But what's weird is he shouldn't be able to communicate with the craft with a radio. The radio wave should bend around the craft. I mean, it shouldn't be possible. Every single thing about the craft and the way they operated didn't make any sense to us. I mean, that's something we talked about for a while after.
Why should the frequency bend around the craft?
Well, you really have to look at the way the gravity wave comes out of the craft. There's the reactor's in the center, and there's a waveguide that goes up to the top. There's actually a small appendage that sticks out of the top of the craft, and it produces a heart-shaped gravitational distortion around the craft. Now, if the craft is sitting in the air and you walk underneath it and look up, you actually cannot see the craft. The light bends around it. You're bending gravity, bends light. It bends radio waves. It shouldn't be possible to communicate with a craft that has an envelope around it that's distorting all forms of energy. But they were apparently in contact with it.
Somehow or another, so through some unexplained way that they didn't bother explaining to you. Mm-hmm. So this thing gets up, it just does some very simple maneuvers, left, right, goes down. And did they discuss this with you? I mean, they said they wanted you to see it.
No, they just wanted, they didn't discuss anything with me. It sat down, we looked around for a bit, and Barry said, let's go back. We went back in the lab. All we got to do was see it. Fast forward to some months later, I did have the test flight schedule of the craft. Now, they had times they had designated high-performance tests. This obviously wasn't one that was a high-performance test. The high-performance test goes above the mountain range, and they do much more radical moves with the thing. Look, this is a prized item, and they're not doing anything like taking it out of the atmosphere or flying around to other countries or anything like that. They just play with this thing right over the test site. But they were doing some radical moves with it. And since I had the test flight schedule, statistically, the amount of traffic in the surrounding areas on the highway was lowest on Wednesdays. And that's why Dennis told us that all the test flights occurred only on Wednesdays. because it'd be the least chance that anyone would see what's going on.
And this was before the government had expanded the forbidden territory around Area 51 and Papoose Lake and all that stuff, right?
Yeah, I think that occurred after my story came out. Then people started going up on the mountaintops and trying to look down into there, and they kind of freaked out and then did the land grab and pushed everybody back. But yeah, I think all that occurred long after that I came out.